It's a chemical burn, baby. Hey folks, it's your favorite Kevin here from Goats and Cookies. Today we have my co-host Zach, and we have our special guest Ken Melton. He's a public relations specialist. We're going to go ahead and start the episode with our book of the week. If Zach, you want to go ahead and take over for that.
Absolutely. So our book of the week is Kill, Do Not Release, written by Douglas Daniel. And it is combat correspondence classified stories from the Second World War. A lot of these were never made public, just due to the graphic nature of what they described in the campaigns on Guadalcanal all the way through to Okinawa. And what's really interesting, and I would love to go through National Archives to see what Daniel left out of this book. But for anyone out there interested in Marine Corps history, especially looking at the role of combat correspondents in World War II, it breaks down the various combat correspondents that served with the Marine Corps in the Pacific, and there were well over 40 of them. Their fates, what units they served with, their campaigns, but it also has the vignettes that were published in Leatherneck, that were published in local hometown newspapers of what these average everyday Marines were doing, sometimes in combat, sometimes on patrol, and sometimes the shit and giggles that you guys are probably familiar with as being in public affairs yourselves. And it's a really interesting light, especially for those that have served in the combat correspondent role post World War II, to see what the predecessors were doing, what the writing style was and the approach to it then, and in many ways how much it hasn't changed. This is a relatively new book. I think it came out about 6 months ago, and it has been a fan favorite of mine, especially for a lot of the uncovered material of what Marines were going through in the Pacific in 1943 to 45.
Excellent, man. Can you show us the cover one more time? Hold it up for a second.
Absolutely.
There it is, gentlemen.
Release.
Great
Badass,
book.
yeah. Yeah, thank you for that, man.
That's
I
on my
really
list.
appreciate it. So, our topic today is imperialism, nationalism, patriotism. That's a heavy topic. It's three heavy topics if you really want to, but when you lump it into one, it's an even heavier topic. So, if it's okay with you, gentlemen, I'm just going to go ahead and hop on in with the questions. The first question for you, Ken, would be back when we were all serving together, did you notice any moments where the concept of patriotism felt more like an expectation than an emotion? And how did that shape the way Marines talked about service or identity there within?
So I think everybody's like, when it comes to being a Marine, they're like, oh, you're a super patriot. You live, breathe, fight, and die, or bleed red, white, and blue, stars and stripes. Um, and it has like a generational influence. Like that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna be the ones that stand up. But not everybody felt patriotic. I didn't join the Marine as a patriot. I joined the Marine because I didn't want to go sell drugs and do other stupid stuff.
Yeah.
I became a patriot once I got some pride behind me, and I started serving and and I was like all like super excited. I remember, being like getting teary-eyed when I heard Lee Greenwood's song come on. I was thought Team America was a great, great defining movie, and it was like just a cool factor to be like, I'm a patriot. That was the emotion behind it. It's like, you felt like you were a part of this massive group, and because it was right after like 2000, 9/11
Hmm.
came in 03, 04, or 5, it was that part of you. It's like you are the face of America. You are the shield of America, and I just kind of went along with that. But, kind of in hindsight, it's like, eh.
Oh, that's a really good answer. On that, I joined because I was just a poor kid with no opportunity, honestly. I wasn't necessarily a patriot. I thought I understood what patriotism was, but I enlisted at 17. It's not like I mean, I didn't know my ass from my elbow at that point in time. I certainly didn't understand the uh, the intricacies of politics within the war. I didn't understand that. It wasn't until I was well within my first enlistment, probably almost a little after my 2 year mark, that I realized, wait, we're not in Iraq because of 9/11. What? Like it really dawned on me. And just coming from a stereotypical Fox News family in South Carolina, it was really eye-opening over time. So that was really well put. I definitely found my patriotism while I was in versus before. Zach, do you have anything on this?
Man, wow, what can I add to that? I mean, I definitely recall Team America, Lee Greenwood's
Mhm.
songs, because while you guys were in Iraq, I was in elementary school, getting ready to go into middle school. And I remember for our Veterans Day and Memorial Days that we would host at the school, bringing veterans in of Lee Greenwood just being blasted, absolutely. And as a kid, I think I mentioned this 2 episodes ago. Um, Post 9/11, I remember seeing posters put up in my town of how to spot a terrorist. What does a terrorist look like? And I remember being like playing with my cousin in the woods. We played army, we played soldiers, and I was like, all right, well, let's fight the terrorist. And I remember as a kid, like that's what I wanted to do. Seeing everything that happened with 9/11, seeing all of the news coverage, the speeches given by President Bush, watching and literally seeing combat take place on CNN and Fox News live or even recorded earlier that day, it inspired me as a kid. And I was like, this is what I want to do because of 9/11. I remember that vividly as a kid. And that's always one of the things I teach my students is, I was not in New York City. By no means, I was not in Washington, D.C. I was here in North Carolina, but 9/11 impacted all of us in some capacity. And I just remember that awe-inspiring awesome feeling of being an American and what it meant to have this view of what I considered patriotism at the time.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think,
And
if we were really talking about it, like I really like what is everybody's definition of like imperialism, patriotism, and nationalism? Like as we're kind of thinking about those scopes, guy. I had to go. I would actually look up. I was like, let me see if my definition is correct. So I just want to know what you guys are thinking about those three things.
Well, imperialism, the American way. I mean, Venezuela is a perfect, I mean, it's a perfect example. Iraq before that. I mean, there were numerous, I mean, all the way back to the Contra, like, we are asserting ourselves throughout this world. I was in Haiti in 2004, and it wasn't because of an uprising. It was because the puppet government we had put in place was being overthrown, and our cheap sugar source was being threatened. That
Hmm.
is imperialism in my mind. Occupation of countries where we have no reason to be there.
Yeah.
I mean, that is imperialism. Patriotism for me would be not blindly supporting my country, critiquing my country with education, critiquing with my experience, and trying to educate other Americans. As much as I like to cuss and scream, I do cuss and scream, and I call them some pretty offensive things sometimes when they're not really getting the point, or they try to, take away the credibility of my argument by just, throwing out some buzzwords they read on Instagram or heard on TikTok or whatever. Um, that's patriotism to me, standing by what I believe, paying taxes willingly, not trying to scam my way out of it. And I would say for nationalism, I mean, nationalism's very obvious at this point. I grew up in what's this is kind of touchy, but I don't expect you guys to have any input on this necessarily, but I grew up raised by Christian Zionists. So Christian Zionism has been replaced entirely by Christian nationalism, where they are basically fascists. They hide behind their religion, or they hide behind the military, they hide behind whatever image they want to throw out. Patriotism, mostly. Um, and I mean, they're tried and true fascists. Like it is nationalism. It is holding your country to an arrogant state, expecting the rest of the world to bow to that state. That would be my answer.
It's a great response in total.
I'm pretty
Um,
great.
So
Uh,
humble.
he is always, you gotta love him. When I think about patriotism for me, and this is one thing, I teach my students, and I always start when I have a discussion like this, because the conversation of patriotism versus nationalism I do in all of my classes, and I always tell my students is that patriotism is loving your country, loving the people in the country, but not being afraid to question the government. And it's even if you support what the government is doing or support any policy changes or anything coming out with any administration, it's not just as Kevin said, blindly following it. It's questioning it. It's like, hold up, why are we doing this? What are we doing it for? Does this better us, the people? Does it better our country? And so, from that political standpoint, I see that as putting us as the Americans first and taking care of our neighbor. That concept that I was raised focused on, of, treat your neighbors and love your neighbors as thyself. To me, that is patriotism. Being able to put aside political views when we can, and hopefully more times than we can, to come together as a country in times of healing and in times to just make our country a better place. Now with nationalism, that one kind of echoing off of Kevin because we grew up similarly in the foothills of Appalachia. I saw a lot of that too with the Christian Zionism and the Christian nationalism of in many ways today seeing so many ways of people just blindly following everything that is happening, whether they believe it's right or not, but just not even questioning. And that's what I always push my students is that if you can just sit down and question why we are doing X, Y, and Z, even if you agree with it, but you're able to research it, that already makes you better educated than I would argue 60% of the American population. Because how many
Hmm.
people, regardless of their political views, are willing to sit down and actually educate themselves on if they support candidate A, why do they support candidate A? Why do they support these changes that we're doing? And that's how I see it. Ken, what about yourself?
Oh, good. Turn it back to me. So when I first thinking about it, I was like, for me, imperialism is wrapped in colonialism. Is
Yeah.
really our. That's why I had to go look because like feels like colonialism. I'm like, but it is enforcing the will upon your nation upon another. Not so much as like taking the nation over, but almost like a subterfuge taking it over. And I was kind of really wrestling with that a lot because that's what I've been really focusing on, like the colonialism around the world and stuff, like how we're still playing out in that view of an imperialism kind of view. Patriotism is like I see people who just generally love their country. My wife's family is from Jamaica. They love Jamaica. They're really about it. They always Olympics comes around. It's like I'm the American and they're cheering Jamaicans and it's so good. Because like they're so proud of their country where they're doing it. Unfortunately, recently they had a devastation, but it's like that's patriots like being proud of where you're from. And and nationalism, I didn't think I would ever see this kind of because I look at nationalism, I'm like, man, this seems so much like Hitler's Germany.
Yeah.
It's like what did this come from? And like it started off being, yeah, go America, I'm very proud. And then all of a sudden it's kind of shifted to this really maddening thing. So anybody says it's almost like a trigger word for I'm like, whoa, wait up, wait, hold on now. It's like we went too far. So, that was as we were thinking about this, that's what I was kind of going through. I was like, if I saw this, if any other place said, they were a nationalist, like nationalist country. I'm thinking of like even like the Japan era, before World War II, and how they were like, this is our country, we're greater, we're crushing everybody else, and like that's what some of the people in our country become like, we're greater than
Yeah.
everybody else, we're crushing. It's like that is not what America is. That is not what we're stand for. So it's yeah, that's I was just thinking of those things as we were going through. So I know I'm just throwing questions out, but
No, no, you're fine.
No, dude,
With
that was
the
awesome.
wave of anti-intellectualism that's sweeping across our nation right now, there are too many like I mean, there's too many people voting on one single issue, and they just blindly believe whatever the politician who is pushing that one issue will say. So if they want immigration handled, they'll believe anything that Trump's saying. I shouldn't have said his name, but they'll believe whatever politician is saying just because they are on that one issue. If they're anti-LGBT, hey, that guy's anti-LGBT. He could be pushing whatever else that affects them personally negatively, and they don't care. It's as long as they're getting one over on somebody else and they feel like they're able to punch down,
mm,
essentially, they're gonna support it. So yeah, it's really it's scary, man. It's a really scary place our nation's headed. On to our next question. This one's for Zach. How has American imperialism shifted from the early 1900s to today? And which older patterns do you see still showing up in modern U.S. policy?
So when we think of U.S. imperialism, you got to look at like the late 1890s is when that really starts to head off. You look at Puerto Rico, you look at Guam, the Philippines, the Spanish-American War, and as Ken pointed out, it is different than colonialism, although very similar. It's enforcing your country's will on this group of people by taking that land, that territory, and the valuables. And you see a lot of the brutality that happens with imperialism. And other countries around the world at the time period of the late 18 and 1900s, almost every major power is imperializing and enforcing their rule somewhere around the world. And when we look at that, World War One and Two kind of expand, but also to an extent stop what we would consider colonialism to imperialism, of actually taking land and territory. Currently, right now, when I think of modern imperialism, we're looking at not necessarily taking territory, but more so, at least the way I see it, corporational imperialism, where we see a lot of our tech corporations, our defense corporations, the military industrial complex expanding out and having imperial roles and control with other countries that we are either supplying weapons to, that we're giving supplies to, or aid in some capacity. Because, as both of you know, wars bring profit to these corporations, and having that imperial hands reaching out all over the world and any kind of conflict that can happen there, that's boosting the pockets of politicians, stockholders in those companies, which some people, and maybe in this chat, are stockholders in there. Yeah, that's why I called you out. I knew it would be fun there. But
Iraq taught me how to invest.
and
That's sad but true.
yep. And it's when
Yeah.
I think of that form of imperialism, it makes me wonder how more dangerous is a modern take on imperialism through corporations going to be in our future, when
Mhm.
how do you fight corporations like that have unlimited money, that realistically pockets that are so deep that we can't even fathom that? At least under imperialism in the 18 and 1900s, people could fight back, arm themselves perhaps. But how do you fight back against corporations? And I think that kind of ties in to patriotism and nationalism. Nationalism is a good way to fuel this imperialism via corporations, is by who your sponsors are. People will believe anything with nationalist ideas that have bought into that. They are dead set. So if it's supporting this corporation in any capacity, supporting that business, they will no matter what, regardless of what the rest of the population does.
Yeah, excellent answer. Ken, unless you have something to add to that, I'm gonna move on to the next one.
Yeah, you can go on. You
All
said a
right.
lot. You said a mouthful, and I was like, all
Best
right.
historian I know. True, I truly mean that. Excellent
I,
historian.
I'm just a nerd, man.
Nah, we all are. I think we we didn't joke about it so much when I was in the whole crayon eater thing. But now, in the Marine Corps communities that I'm in, we all joke about us being the most autistic people on the planet. I mean, it plays out true. I think the spectrum was less in the limelight back in the day, but now that it is, it's like it's undeniable. So Ken, the next question is, back when you were serving as a combat correspondent, how much did the messaging you helped shape with your stories rely on patriotic or nationalist themes? And did any of it feel out of sync with what you were actually experiencing firsthand?
So, I mean, I think we all had to confront reality and just kind of know that our content emphasized national pride more than impartiality. I was guilty of that as well. I would actively seek out individuals whose backgrounds didn't align with the typical ideal of American. And, most of these are like immigrants, people from different spectrums who I met and trying to embrace each other, one as brothers and stuff, trying to show that, look at America, how great we are, how we bring people together. Just because I knew that would sell, that heartfelt story would sell of, how we look all together. And it felt more natural and authentic now. But as I start looking, we're in a bubble. We're in a bubble when you're in the military. You have your people around, and it's like, um, everything is great. Everything your brothers and sisters are all the great, and it's all going well towards it. But then as you start seeing, you get a little older, you start seeing the actual world for what it is outside of the military. It started really feeling disjointed. It's like, we say that we believe in one another and that we are taking each other up, but what we're really doing is people on the outside, they're still uncomfortable with each other. They're uncomfortable with this idea, that idea. But when you're in the military, especially in the Marines, you are dialed into no matter where you come from or where you are, you're a Marine. A Marine is a Marine. So yeah, it felt totally disjointed now, but looking back at those times, it felt almost natural because I was in my bubble and it was successful.
Hmm. I mean, that makes perfect sense. I often say this isn't directly related to what you say, but I often say, in retrospect, I met some of the best people of my life while I was in the Marine Corps, but I also met some of the worst people of my life while I was in the Marine Corps, and having to work with them, having to associate with them, and having to for lack of a better word, love them as brothers was fucking hard at times. But
Hmm.
I feel like I've kind of weakened over the years because I'm not able to do that at this point. I can't look past the things I looked past when I was, 18, 19, 20 years old. Um, things really hit me hard, and I think the ignorance of the youth, plays a big part of it. That's why they don't recruit old assholes like
Yeah.
they get the young guys who don't know any better. Zach, do you have anything to add?
Man, I can't add anything to that.
All right.
Realistically, I mean, Ken did a great job of it, but to
Hmm.
me, you what feels out of sync with what you guys were experiencing versus what I was seeing back home. I think that would make an interesting episode
Yeah.
sometime. Is to bring several of you Iraq combat vets in from your firsthand experiences, but to what I saw in the media as a kid, my perspective of the war in Iraq as a 8, 9, 10, and 11-year-old kid watching that, especially considering how the media outlet was portraying it at the time. Not just, Fox News or CNN, but eBaum's World, some of those other wild, whack websites
Ogrish.
out there
Yeah, I
where
remember him.
you don't just see what the media wants you to see, you see things firsthand that perhaps an 11-year-old realistically should never be able to have access to see.
Hmm.
Yeah. I was talking earlier to someone. I was explaining the Marine Corps Museum. And I'll be completely honest, that was a really hard experience for me. Going through there, seeing all of the older exhibits that they had throughout, I mean, it was really educational, it was really interesting. But especially once I got to Iraq and Afghanistan, man, it was really hard to walk through there. So there was that point where we saw that sniper rifle, and you pointed out like, oh, that's that sniper team, and I was just like, I knew those guys. I didn't know them very well, but I had gone out with them a couple times. I remember, and to your point, I remember watching. Okay, let me preface with that. That with we had what was called River City. I'm sure you remember, Ken, what River
Hmm.
City was. Anytime a Marine went down or there was a casualty of some sort, we called Operation River City, which meant all of the computer centers, all of the phone centers, everything was shut down until the family members of that fallen Marine or soldier or sailor or whoever were properly notified. When that sniper team went down from 4th Marines, they they blasted those videos. The Mujahideen blasted those videos on Ogrish and E-Bombs World, and there were a few other ones I can't recall right off the top of my head. And River City was out the window at that point. I mean, it was within 24 hours that they had just blasted all of these videos. So these families found out that their kids, their children, their brothers, their sisters had passed away in Iraq by watching these videos of them desecrate their bodies, carry their naked corpses. I mean, it
Yeah.
was a mess, man. It was terrible. So to your point, like when you're 11 years old and you're seeing what I'm thinking of right now, oh my God. I can only imagine what was going through your head. I don't know why anyone would want to enlist after seeing that blasted on, because that's nothing new. That happened in that worse than that has happened in every single previous war, every one of them. I mean, especially with World War II, I mean, we've all read the accounts of what happened if you were captured by the Japanese in the Empire of Japan in various conflicts in various theaters. It's not pretty. And the phrase war is hell is as prevalent as it is for a reason. It's nothing that's supposed to be glorified or romanticized.
Hmm.
And I think that's a big part of why museums like that, and especially the Iraq and Afghanistan exhibit, were so hard for me to experience again, is because there's no military worship going on there. The context is very good, but at the same time, I remember watching, there was a Boy Scout troop walking through there and looking at all this stuff like it was so cool. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, ugh, like, oh God,
Kind of.
kids.
Yeah. It was like,
Yeah, y'all need some perspective on this
yeah.
because, man, I didn't have a choice. This was the opportunity. I've been able to go to university and buy houses and start businesses and all this other crap because I did that unsavory act. It's not something I look back on fondly. I love the Marine Corps. Don't get me wrong. I
Hmm.
absolutely adore the Marine Corps. I did not like a lot of the Marines, but I had a great time and I have a lot of honor from it. But at the same time, it's just it's a really sticky subject, man. And anyway, Ken, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too far out of the rabbit hole, but when you start talking about the sniper team, I was like, he's not talking about
Uh,
325. No, he's
yep.
not.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
was
I
like,
am.
oh crap, you are.
Hmm.
I don't know how familiar you guys are, but like that was my unit. Those were my
Yeah,
guys. And not even a week after that, I was hanging out with, because I wanted to go out on one of those observations with them, but I didn't get a chance to go, and I
yeah,
was like down there when it happened. And then like a couple of days later, I was with some of the surviving members of that platoon, and they had a picture of his friend dead.
yeah,
It was kind of saddening, and I asked, "Hey, man, why you have that there?" He's like, because I want to remember it and I want to know that it's real. And I was like, "That's fair." I didn't, because I was going around there to talk to them if they wanted to have anything to say, a story or whatever. But it was like, yeah, it's like one of those things like I put in the back of my mind, and then like when you say something, my brain's like, oh,
yeah.
and their names pop up. I don't want to, be disrespectful to their family, but I know that I remember their names and what they look like. It came back like that, and I was like, oh yeah,
Well, in the museum when we were walking through there, they had captured all of their gear and all their equipment, and the video that they had posted online showed all of their gear and all their equipment. Well, one of their sniper rifles was recaptured. I think, what was it, 2 years later, Zach?
Yeah.
2 years later, it's in the Marine Corps Museum, in Quantico or in Triangle, and seeing it, man, it brought back some stuff.
yeah,
It was hard to see, and I don't think the I don't think there's a way that we can express the message that you and I are feeling, especially right now, thinking about these guys. There's no way to put that out to that Boy Scout troop that was walking through there. Just a lot of dialogue, like, look at all
yeah,
this cool stuff. Look at these guns. Look at this. They didn't see that sniper rifle the same way you and I saw it. They don't have all the thoughts of the higher ups and why were they on the same observation post for 4 weeks in a row. They don't. I mean, they don't think about all this stuff. And it's so surreal. It's just
yeah.
surreal. I think that's the best way I can put it. So yeah, it's really rough.
Well,
But
to add to that real quick,
yeah,
Kevin,
please do.
for me, that used to be me as a kid.
Mhm.
Ken, to let you in, I didn't serve. I can't serve. I have a rare blood disease, and I can't serve in any branch of the service whatsoever. It is not AIDS. Let me clarify. It is a form of hemophilia. I always stress that to people
You're a
as a
red
joke.
patch. You got your red patch.
That's
Yeah.
right. Um, but as a kid, though, that was me going through all these museums. I was like, wow, look at all these rifles, these machine guns. Like, this is awesome. And as Kevin pointed out, changing perspective, my perspective started to change, not just because, I read books, I got educated. I started talking to veterans that were willing to talk to me. And that changed how I started to see museums, and to see how perhaps an attempt at glorification is made versus when you put veterans there, it's not glorification. It is hard
Yeah.
memories. It's hard stories that people struggle to talk about. Painful memories that maybe people have buried that we do need to talk about so people can realize what perspective means for our veterans that have been there. And so that's one of the things I'm grateful for Kevin, for Lou, for you yourself, Ken, that eventually, perhaps if we end up talking, is being willing to go that route to open up and change my perspective of how I see the museums, how change my view of the books I read.
All right, Zach, for our next question, nationalism tends to spike in moments of uncertainty. So, which historical moments feel most similar to what we're dealing with in the U.S. right now?
So this is a question that thankfully I had, 2 weeks to dig into, because there's so many different avenues historians can take, and that's what I love about the brain of a historian. You bring somebody else on here, and they will claim a different time period than I would, just for how we see it. But for me, I would say it's the interwar period between World War One and Two. You think of the shock of World War One then. Now, granted, we haven't been in a world war since 1945. However, our shock was COVID. And I know that for many people, they may say, well, COVID wasn't that big of a deal, but you've got to think about what COVID changed. Just from my standpoint as an educator, COVID changed so much in my daily life, as a teacher, in the span that we had to deal with it, let alone, you got to think of what COVID did with political polarization, for one side arguing for vaccines, one side arguing against vaccines, and all the different rabbit holes that tended to lead people down. In the 1920s 20s and 30s, you have a huge distrust of the government, especially throughout Europe. I mean, we see that now. We've talked about it. People that are not trusting local politicians, let alone politicians at the federal level. People are really starting to question, to an extent, at least my belief, is that what can we trust with our media? We have talked about that in this podcast of what true media sources do we have out there outside of Fox, CNN that we can catch on a daily basis that are telling true narratives that are trying to be as nonpartisan as possible without trying to shift one side or the other. Currently, think about the economy. In that period of the 1920s, you got the Great Depression that rockets the world. We've talked about the stocks recently. There's a lot of economic insecurity that people are analyzing right now. Predictions of a possible depression, predictions of a possible boom, depending on what you look at there. I know my stocks aren't looking that great, and it makes me sad, but that's fine. That's fine. It's all going to be okay there. And then you've got our current concept of national identity that has changed within the last 10 to 15 years, but it's really been brought to light. Are we identifying as Americans today, or are we identifying as Republicans or Democrats? Are we identifying as liberal or conservative? Are we identifying, as they versus them in these culture wars that we see emerging more frequently, where it seems like everything is dividing us instead of trying to bring us together? And so for me, I see a lot of parallels to the 30s period of perhaps we've got a larger conflict looming that somehow brings us together again, like World War II did for the American people that were broken after the Great Depression, broken after some administrations. And that'll eventually come back to I think my next question of patriotism being unifying. I'll start it prematurely. It is, but I see patriotism really unifying us in times of great crisis where we've experienced a traumatic event like war, 9/11, December 7th, 1941, and that's where I'll stop there unless you guys have any questions.
Oh, that was really good, man. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
I was gonna say, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I was thinking back, like every generation has this big turning point where it kind of, like really like sets people back. And like COVID was the most recent one. Before that, it was 9/11. And before that is either Gulf War or the Beirut bombing, whichever one you're looking at, or Challenger. But it's like there's something that happens that kind of like puts you back in there, and it's like it resets our mind frame, and it's just weird to see too, in a short lifespan we lived.
Well, and it's interesting you bring that up, Ken. It's like, COVID was the turning point for, all of us, and especially this generation of kids. But it makes me wonder, what's the next turning point going to be? Realistically, like, yeah, COVID rocked our world. 9/11 really what rocked the world for the four of us here. The three of you went the Marine Corps route. You're combat veterans of Iraq. I saw things from the home front. Well, what does it mean 10 or 15 years from now with another event that hits? It gets more scary the more I think about it because the possibilities are unlimited.
Yeah, it's interesting the time period you brought up because I'm very open about being a socialist. I'm not shy whatsoever, and I'm not in the you're a Democrat, you're a socialist sense. I see Democrats as capitalist pigs. I'll admit it. I'm not shy about that crap at all. That mid time between World War I and World War II was I mean it was obviously more dangerous to say I'm a socialist or I'm a communist. But any of Marxist ideology was demonized heavily to where you could be put in prison depending on where you were. Even in other countries, in England, it was the same. Big Brother was always looking for us. So that's just another similarity I wanted to throw at. I know that's purely anecdotal, but I've made that connection as well, and seeing the country kind of going down that same route. It scares me for the future. It scares me for this next generation. Seeing all these Marines being stationed or activated and put in Puerto Rico right now, and just being ready for Venezuela. I think it's cover for keeping Bad Bunny out of doing the halftime show.
They're taking it so far. He can't perform.
But I think you guys know where I'm coming from with this. It's a really odd time to be an American, especially as patriotic as I am. I love America. I absolutely love America. I love the Marine Corps. But as a socialist, it's like, ooh, I've seen these patterns before. So it's a really sketchy time, and I appreciate that answer. That's really solid, man. Um, So on to the next question. This one's for you, Lou. And I didn't mention you at the intro, but my co-host Lou, our communications specialist here. From a communication standpoint, does modern political messaging intentionally blur the line between nationalism and patriotism? And how does the media in specific handle that blurring?
Ah, um, I don't know if necessarily we're talking about blurring the line more as smearing the line
Mm,
and sort of denying any sort of like if you called somebody, say, a nationalist, they would probably completely deny it, despite doing very nationalist things.
yeah,
And so, I mean, you have again, like we've talked about this over and over again. You've got some media stations that will call that out, um, call them Christian nationalists or whatever the case may be, and then others that those phrases never even hit the station, like never hit the airwaves. Or if it is, it's in a mocking way on one of the commentary shows of, yeah, they'll call you a Nazi or a Christian nationalist or whatever. Um, so yeah, I I think that um, we as consumers of media and we as American citizens have to really educate ourselves on what these different ideologies are and what they represent and what they stand for, and that way you can more easily recognize the you know symptoms of it or what you're seeing, um because if you're relying on the media to tell you something is you know one ideology or the other, you're probably going to be waiting for a long time. um but I kind of going back on the whole Venezuela thing, it's just interesting to me. I don't know if hopefully this time we don't have short-term memories, and we don't forget all the phrases and all the things, all the reasons that we went into Iraq. Because it's interesting that the same people that want to go into Venezuela were completely against the war in Iraq and still call it a mistake. Yet we are sitting here saying the same thing about another country that would be another regime change war, another um, decades long, endless, and I hate to say it, winless war. Because again, like in Iraq, like how do you win? What is winning? The fact that they can vote in their own elections, that has flaws in it
yeah.
now too. Um, I would say spending more than $2 trillion of American taxpayer money on something that uh, the original cause of it didn't exist in the first place, weapons of mass destruction. Um, and here we are again, using the same phrases. We're just
You
we're
know,
just in a different part of the
on
world this
using
time.
using the same phrases, I was in LA 3 days ago, and I saw a protest. And sorry, I'm just going to try to show this over my camera. I don't know how well this is going to show up through here, but if you look, it's an anti-Venezuelan war. And speaking of using the same phrases over and
No
over,
blood for oil.
no blood for oil. You know
Wow.
what, man? We laugh about that, and it is kind of funny. But when I saw that, it really stuck with me, man. And like I kind of teared up. It's like 20 fucking years later, and we're still fighting this battle. Um, Venezuela just discovered within the past few years that they have massive oil reserves, like massive. And all of a sudden we got to get Venezuela. They got these drug runners. That's their version of the fucking WMDs. Yeah, I mean, we got to send in the Marines. That's just the same as us. I mean, like I
Well,
think
and
the
this,
lessons have been forgotten.
Oh
Continue,
yeah.
please.
well, in this time, the weapon of mass destruction is fentanyl, right? But there are no, as
Is
far as
boats.
yeah, as far as we can see, that Venezuela is not necessarily a producer of fentanyl.
Mm-mm.
Um, so, you know,
It's the cocaine that certain politicians' sons are doing on stage, and we have video footage of him with his hand in his pocket and then rubbing it on his lips. I mean, we
yeah.
like,
Well,
guys.
you know, if you want to get fentanyl, just break your leg. Let's
Yeah.
go to the hospital.
Yeah.
You know,
I was on
there's your
Dilaudid.
producer
Oh God, that
of
stuff's
fentanyl.
it'll mess you up, man. And it's like highly addictive, highly, highly, highly addictive. I don't know why they use that crap. I broke my back last year in that motorcycle accident, and
Mm.
I turned down any sort of narcotics. I asked for it was a tramadol. Tramadol is a non-narcotic, and it worked a treat. Like it was perfect for what I needed. And when I needed to stop, it was easy. I just kept going. But
So
the
you didn't
pharmaceutical companies, blah 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 blah.
you didn't want to have weapons of mass destruction enter your body?
I had a speedboat going right toward my veins. Yeah.
Those WMDs, I'm trying to get that oil.
Oh.
That's funny.
All right, man. I appreciate that answer. Do you guys have anything you want to add to that before we move on?
Oh, my last, I will add
Please, please.
one
Sorry,
thing.
man. I didn't mean to cut you off.
So a lot of, it's kind of sad that like we're getting, we end up getting a lot of our news and sort of picture from comedians, right? Because comedians are probably the most like no BS sort of, we're just going to call it as it is type thing. And it's like when comedians have taken over the information, um, sort of the information dissemination part of our society, like where are we at?
I
You
mean, we
know,
had Jon Stewart and Colbert doing that for many years now, and
still doing it. Yeah,
they became the most credible sources of news for a long time.
right.
That's a solid point.
Yep. So I mean, I have to give shout out to Dave Chappelle for the Bush parody that we just quoted there. But I mean, that's like it's a parody, but it's like it's not too far off from the truth, is it?
There's a
It's
grain of
really not.
truth sprinkled in with that humor.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I'll say this: there's no better way to honor Dick Cheney than to start another war.
Oh man.
Hey,
Oh.
I'm
You
invested
can
in
cut the,
KBR,
you probably
so
cut that
I'm
out so they
honoring
don't
that
kick.
fucker.
I'm gonna get my door kicked in.
No, we're actually lightweights as far as that goes, man. I think if the likes of Nick Fuentes can get out there and say what the crap that they're saying, then we're gonna be all right. Um, so moving on for our next question. This one is for back to you, Ken.
Mm.
In your PR work today, how often do you see organizations using patriotism or American values as a like a shield when they want to avoid criticism?
So it's become less now because of, where we are. But beforehand, it was like to have the hey, let's honor our veterans on this day and oh, this discount here for this, and oh, look at us, we're supporting the American class and we have made in America. So they would, kind of hide behind it and kind of show that they were there for the people, but to like, really it's a flash in the pan. It's a small amount of money that they're willing to spend to update their brand image.
Hmm.
And really all their stuff is still produced overseas, not locally. It's not American made. They can say it as much as they want, but it's like that's what a lot of corporations that I've seen doing. It's like they love it when it's that time of year, and they love it when it's a way for them to reduce their taxes and update their brand profile. But just over the past couple of years, though, it's definitely taken a nosedive. Whereas it's not as glamorous anymore.
That's good.
So
I would say that's a good thing. It's funny you bring up the working class because I have a quote here from the great Fred Hampton. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with who Fred Hampton is, but socialism is the people. If you're afraid of socialism, you're afraid of yourself. Bringing up the working class, throwing nationalism out to project a support of the working class has been it's a time honored tradition, and it's also a very scum tradition. The working class has been brought down time and time again. That's why only poor people, I can't say only poor people, but mostly poor people are the ones enlisting and fighting in these wars. It's not the wealthy kids going and fighting these wars. And Credence said it themselves, it's not the senator's son.
Not no sin
It's
of the sun.
got the little switch in the helicopter to play play the song. But it's at the same time, I gotta show you guys my my business card. I'm gonna cover up most of it. You can see the LLC. My business card definitely has veteran-owned business. See it right there, little tiny EGA, and it says veteran-owned business. I'm not necessarily facing any flack, but I see the value in putting that on. And I know it's gotten me plenty of business in the past, and it's a double-edged sword, I can blame and blame and blame, but I live in capitalism. I have to play the capitalist game, and I do. And so, the question I ask is a serious one. I see. I don't mean to necessarily point fingers at these people. I want to kind of more shed light on it than anything. And as I said, I do it.
Lou, you had something?
I'll
Oh,
say this, like, I mean, if you're talking about, having hesitancy to put veteran-owned business on it, it's like, I mean, corporations will constantly put family-owned business on things,
Yeah.
right? So you're not doing anything different than any other company that's just trying to get not necessarily an advantage, but to, in stating that you're talking about who your company is, right? Like if somebody says, "Oh, it's a veteran-owned business," they're like, "Oh, well, they probably do pretty good work, right? Like they probably, right? That's the assumption,
They're not going to rip me off, at
right? They're
least.
not gonna rip me off. They're gonna be honored, and all that good stuff. And so there's value in that. And I would say any veteran out there that's starting a business, like definitely utilize that as much as you can. I wouldn't say go so far as to put, you know, military in the name or anything like that, but even if you wanted to, I mean. What's to stop you? You've earned it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Might as well.
I was at Wounded Warrior Battalion for a year and a half before I was retired, medically retired. And at my 10 and a half year mark, I don't put Wounded Warrior logo on there, though, even though I definitely could, because I don't donate any of the funds to them. I mean, I'll be completely honest. Why would I put their logo on there if I'm not giving them funds? And it's not because I don't want to, it's because I don't make that much. Make that much off of my business, but it's enough to sustain myself. But yeah, I mean, I put that on there. It's just to scrounge up a lot of business, and it does scrounge up a lot of business. People are more likely to talk to me. People are more likely to pick up that card and call me, especially the older crowd. And unfortunately, the older crowd are the ones that have the money. If they're not pissing it away in Vegas, then they're they're calling people like me who have it on their business card. Is that a form of nationalism? Uh,
It's leaning towards patriotism, though, but yeah.
some.
Oh, something just came to me too. I think it's important also to distinguish that nationalism is not America first, by the way. Like that's
Yeah, I
not
agree.
their ideologies are not an America first agenda.
It's them
Um,
first.
you would think so, right? But um, yeah, it's more of a selfish way of looking at
Hmm.
society. Whereas under the guise that it is about us as a collective nation and all that and putting America first. But um, you know, when just look at some of the things that have happened, how much money we've been sending to other countries, and here we are again, not putting America first, um, heading down to Venezuela. So.
On that note, Lou, Ken asked us earlier what our definitions were of imperialism and nationalism and patriotism were. What would you define those three as? Sorry to kind of put you on the spot.
Um, well, patriotism, I would say goes line in line, at least in America here, with constitutionalism, right? Like standing up for the rights of your fellow citizens, standing against a tyrannical government. Those sort of principles that found. I mean, I just watched The Patriot the other night, and not saying it's obviously the most historically accurate or the most,
Mel Gibson's a national. No, no, go ahead.
that
I'm
stare,
sorry.
man. He's got that stare. Uh, my sons were better men. But yeah, no, I think it's standing against tyranny and again supporting your fellow countrymen, no matter you know where they come from or who they are, whether you agree with them politically or not. We all have these rights, right? And so if I don't stand up for your rights, who's going to stand up for mine? And to me, that's what patriotism is. It's not superficial patriotism of wearing American flag bikini, which is also desecration of the flag, by the way.
Oh, I gotta take
Um,
mine off.
I'm gonna put the flag on my balls. Uh,
The old banana hammock, yeah.
yeah. Uh, and I think a lot of people will, you know, do the normal like 4th of July barbecue and flying all the flags and lighting off all the fireworks and call themselves a patriot. But uh, to me, it's deeper than just that. It's not that superficial layer.
So would you say a lot of these podcasters having some fake Navy SEAL admitting to like 1,000 war crimes is patriot? Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna if you guys are cool with it, I'm gonna move on to the next one. This question is for Zach, and I think this is a really good question. It's is patriotism historically more unifying or more divisive? And does the way people use the word today resemble any particular era that you've studied?
That's a very good question. Historically, if we're going to go to the OG roots of patriotism, you got to look at 1770, 1775, 1780 through the pre and during the American Revolution, where to then patriots and those supporting it were committing to liberty, our concept of independence, and resisting what we saw as a tyrannical king. Now, as I see the concept of patriotism over time, it's a double-edged sword. Where it can 100% unite a nation behind shared ideals, our shared views of wanting freedom and independence, but the double-edged side of it can come into play of what we define as who is truly a patriot, in which we've kind of seen more so in about the past 10 to maybe 15 years. Um, I really think a great example of that is Vietnam. Early part of the Vietnam War, people saw it as patriotic, even the middle and latter parts, patriotic to go and enlist, or if you got your draft notice, to accept your draft notice to serve your country. Their fathers had done it in World War II or Korea. Their grandfathers had done it in World War One. It was now their time. Whereas on the flip side of the coin, some people in the country saw it as patriotic to resist the war in Vietnam for what they saw as American imperial tendencies. So when you've got a definition of that, when you've got the conflicting views of ideas, it really can become a very thin line of what we consider patriotic depending on our views. But I think of my own views in childhood, and I think the three of you would agree. September 11th, and I'd say maybe 2 or 3 years after September 11th, we really saw patriotism really bring people together. And my point, like I said earlier, it is really sad that oftentimes what unites Americans behind patriotism and us wanting a conjoined front, putting aside our political ideologies and caring for one another is tragedy. Pearl Harbor, great example. Pearl Harbor was 2 days ago, the 84th anniversary of it. You could have heard pin drops in American households across the United States in 1941 as they heard the attack unfolding. September 11th, in many ways, a worse tragedy simply because people were not just hearing it through radio, they were watching it live on TV. Like the world literally stopped turning, that Alan Jackson song, where I watched it live from a second grade classroom. You guys perhaps watched it live from the barracks, wherever you were deployed at the time. I know my parents, my dad stopped what he was doing working at Toyota to watch it on TV. They stopped what they were doing working on cars that day. And we were all united on September 12th. It's that saying that people say, let's not remember who we were on September 10th, but let's remember who we were on September 12th, where as long as you were an American, it did not matter. And I fear that realistically, with our views today of patriotism, I think the or the four of us would agree that we are patriots because, we have different political views, sure, but we question everything around us. We accept one another. I support all of your beliefs. However, we can all agree, seriously, at the end of the day. I think that we could have a serious political conversation. The four of us wouldn't get mad at each other for some stupid bullshit reason because we're adults. We are educated. And, that's your patriotic view, but we are all patriots supporting each other's views and caring for one another. Some people in this country don't see it that way. Their view of patriotism is that everyone has to accept my view. We are the patriots. They are not. Because whether I support liberalism, I support conservatism, I support Trump, I support Harris, that defines who's patriotic today. And I think it's a term that we have muddled to an extent of what it really means to be patriotic. Being patriotic is not about which candidate you support or what side, but it's your reasons for supporting it. Is your reason for supporting this political organization what the United States military is doing, what this administration is doing? Is it for independence? Is it for the betterment of the people? Is it America first? Is it rallying us together to propel us forward? Or is it for political agendas to make someone wealthier, to make one side appear larger or better than the other? Where does that bring us in a modern world where patriotism turns a blurred line to whether you support an elephant or whether you support a donkey?
Mm.
Oh, well said. Bravo, man. That
Yeah.
was very profound. Great answer.
Add in, boys.
Yeah.
When you say it with such confidence like that, it's like, I don't want to follow that. Yeah, ditto.
Exactly. Hey, as the host, I get to just say, "Oh, that was a great answer," and you guys added. Um, man, honestly though, that was the perfect answer. I can't really challenge it, except for I don't think most people agree with my political belief. That crazy Kevin, he's just going to come out and say all kinds of radical shit. But
Well,
I
I'll chime in here and interrupt you, Kevin, for a moment. I really
okay,
hate
sure,
doing that, but I think that's the beauty of America and what it means to be patriots. Patriots are diverse people.
yeah,
If we look at our founding fathers and the concept of patriotism, you have different religions coming together. You have different cultures. People in the 1770s did not identify as Americans. They identified as North Carolinians, as Virginians, South Carolinians, as New Yorkers. And they were able to put aside the cultural differences of the colonies, the language barrier there. And by 1778 or 1779, you have this concept of a united patriotic front to defeat the British, regardless of who we are. And I think that's the beauty of your political views, Kevin, of Ken's, of Lou's, is that's what makes us Americans, is we're different. I don't gotta agree with you, but I can learn from you and be like, that's fucking cool. You believe that. I don't agree with it, but man, that's awesome. Explain it to me more how you see it this way. That's patriotism to me, is learning from my fellow Americans and instead of hating you for what you believe in, understanding why you believe in it. Now, what's scary as hell about that, and I think this maybe adds on to our modern world today, your views could change me, Kevin. Your views could change how I see things, and that scares the hell out of a lot of people. Opening
yeah.
up my mind to that open conversation of why the three of you believe what you believe could possibly shift my opinions. For a lot of people out there, that's too much. We don't know what change is going to bring, but at the same time, that's the beauty of being an American. Change has always been prevalent in this country. It might not have happened as fast as it should have had for a lot of people in this country, but we have come a long ways to an extent, in my views. And I think that there's a hell of a lot ways that we can go in this country. And I just hope that people wise up and realize what it really does mean to be patriotic for us so we can propel as a country, not as a nationalistic view of one party, but as people, as Americans, is what it means for us to wear the colors of the red, white, and blue, to serve it in some capacity, for those of you that have sworn that oath, or somebody like me who teaches the history of it.
And that's the threat. That's that. You know what? You put it really well where you said it kind of scares you. That's the threat of checks and balances.
Yeah.
That is what the Constitution guarantees us. Is checks and balances within the government, within the people, within the laws that we create, the taxation. I mean, it's all about checks and balances, and you cannot have checks and balances being the key word here, without opposing views. You just cannot. There is no balance. It's a tipped scale, and there's no arguing that. I mean, the tipped scale metaphor kind of explains it perfectly. And you're never going to have fairness within any civilization without those checks and balances. And that should be somewhat scary. It should be threatening in a sense, but in a more innocent sense, not in the way that people are making it out right now. With talking about Mamdani, for example, I think I've brought up this example before with Ted Cruz was talking about. He was like, he's worse than a communist. He's a Marxist, and it's like communism came from Marxist ideologies, like the philosophy of Marx. But
He was
regardless,
just
it's
saying what he heard.
yeah, I mean, they have no idea what they're talking about. But there's so many people with, as I was mentioning earlier, the wave of anti-intellectualism. These people will believe anything they're fucking told, and I mean, it just depends on who tells them. It's ridiculous. I've had so many conversations with people where I throw out socialist buzzwords and key phrases. Oh, the means of production belongs in the hands of the people. Any attempt to disarm the working class should be met by force. These are Karl Marx. And they're always like, yeah, before they hear that it's Karl Marx, they're flying their Trump flag, thinking Trump said this shit. And they absolutely hate everything. And that anti-intellectualism, that is what scares me. Difference of opinion. I've grown up. I mean, I was raised by, as I said, Fox News family. Like if my parents hadn't passed away, my mother in '03 and my dad in 13, they would have been MAGA. I was kind of, dare I say, blessed that I didn't have to go through the whole my parents are MAGA crazy, blah, 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 and I have to deal with that all the time. So it's that as I was saying, kind of bring it full circle. The checks and balances are important, and we need that, and that's what the Constitution guarantees us. That's why we have freedom of speech. That's why we have freedom of religion. That's why we have freedoms guaranteed to us, inalienable freedoms guaranteed to us. Salute. As a Marine combat correspondent, when you wrote your stories, did you approach reporting on military actions when the official narrative didn't line up? How did you approach the reporting on military actions when the official narrative didn't line up with your own experiences?
Um, the unfortunate thing is I did what I was told,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Isn't that propaganda?
yeah, I mean, well, Ken can attest to this. I mean, we were together in Iraq. We had the same chain of command in Iraq. We sent our stories to the same people. Your stories have to go up through a chain, right? And so I may want to report certain things or talk about certain things that I saw or experienced because it's the same things that the Marines that I'm writing about experienced. But somebody up top might not see it the same way, right? And might see something that I'm not seeing, um, big picture wise, that would disrupt telling. Our job is to tell the Marine Corps story, not necessarily tell my personal views or my personal story on things. Um, so I had to keep that in mind, um, on anything that I wrote about, and also understanding that there are a lot of sensitive things that happen in Iraq that, you know, the military and the government in general don't want the American public to just have their hands on, and to be swayed. So what what I've done recently more so is just tell my story now that I'm not obligated to the Marine Corps anymore,
Mm.
as far as that aspect goes. Once a Marine, always Marine. But um, yeah, and maybe Ken can definitely probably add to this on that front
Before he
as
does, and
well.
I definitely want him to, how has this translated into your current specialty in communications? Like, how would you say what lessons did you learn and that have carried on versus the ones you left behind?
I mean, the bottom line for me too, like even now in my communications role, right? I work for an organization, all right? They pay me money. I am supposed to tell their story, right? The way
Yeah.
that they want it to be told. That's just the reality of it. If I want to create my own commentary thing, I do things like this. If I want to tell my opinions, I do things like this.
Mm.
If I wanted to tell my own damn story, I'll open my own damn company, you know?
I think
And
that's a lesson that should be taught to everyone as far
yeah,
as media is concerned. Yeah.
you are, you know, as a communications specialist in this world, and this kind of just shows also the journalistic part of it too. These journalists are paid by an organization, and they're paid to do a job for the organization. If their job, if the organization doesn't want your opinions on a certain story, then you shouldn't be given those opinions on that story. I mean, that's just the
Yeah.
way it is. Now, do I think that you should manipulate and skew things into, you know, and sacrifice ethics? No, no, not at all. Like they're obviously lying or changing facts or anything like that. That just goes against everything ethically, morally, and journalistically too. Um, as far as like codes of ethics, which I think most companies do, from what I've seen, at least have some sort of balance on that and adherence to a code of ethics. Um, so yeah, for me, it's just understanding my place in the situation.
Yeah, great answer. Ken, what would you add to that, kind of from your perspective?
Yeah, so it's one of the things that, like Lou was saying, we're there to tell a story. We're there to tell the story that they want to hear. And I think when I was younger, there was a couple of stories that I wanted to tell that, that got shot down. It didn't match the narrative. Looking back, one of those stories definitely, shouldn't have gone. The other one I still feel strongly it should have.
Mm.
But I was working for them. I was doing their job. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't immoral. It wasn't unethical. It just didn't match the story frame that that company wanted to do, that the Marine wanted me to do. And so, just like Lou was saying, I have to do my job, but I have to, as I'm doing my job, I'm asking, is it ethical? Is it true? Uh, is it worthwhile? And if those questions, those answers are all yes, then I'm like, okay, well, I tell the story. I may not agree with it, but that's just my own personal opinion. They're not paying for my own personal opinion, which, one of the things that annoys me the most about uh TV news. Like I grew up watching news, loving TV news because they would just report the news. Not everybody and their mother have an opinion on everything. It's like I didn't ask for your opinion. I asked you to report the news. I don't need, the first five or whatever talk show or whatever. It's like, no, just tell me the news, not your opinion. And I
Yeah,
think we've lost a lot of that in the last 20 something years, where it went from people, taking the news and manipulating it to their own means instead of just reporting it because they want to get more views rather than, tell the truth.
absolutely. Which kind of, that kind of somewhat leads me into my next question for you, Ken. Having worked in both military public affairs as well as civilian public relations, what similarities do you see in how narratives about strength, loyalty, or national pride get crafted? And that does absolutely play off of what you were just saying.
Yeah. So, when you're working with like I was spending like time in the Marines and the federal government, it's like the strength, loyalty, national pride that played heavily in the military, more so than when I was working with the federal government. The loyalty and the national pride was more along the lines of, a strong government, supporting the people, you know, a strong government, making sure uh, that people can trust that the organization is doing the right thing. They can trust that they are making the rules fair for everyone, especially for farmers. When I was working for ag department, it was very big on, how can we ensure that the farmers have their information and how can we show that, their crops should be sold, exported, imported and stuff. Um, and that was like the real biggest similarity of it all. But, that as the more I started to work in the civilian space, it became more of what can our company do to show that we're a strong partner? How can our company, you know, show that we're propping up this ideal or this type of you know, position because they realize that, is much as they want to show what they're good at, they want to also show that they're great partners because they want to get the money from the government cheese.
Mm.
When it comes down
Yeah.
to it, it's like, how can I make them like me so they can buy more of my things, so we can consult them more? What can I do that's towing the line of legality and still make money?
Yeah.
Whereas in the military, it's like, no, you have one thing to do is like, tell this so it makes us look good, rather than no, tell this so we can look good to get more money.
So it was
So,
definitely easier being in the
oh yeah,
military.
by far
There
and
was
large,
one
yeah,
narrative to push. Yeah.
yeah.
What lessons do you think that you learned from the military that you carry over today, even within your profession?
Uh, I hate to say it, like learning and respecting the chain of command, like
Mm,
the politics. Like I didn't really understand the politics when I first got into the civilian side, um, but knowing that just because my boss is happy with the product doesn't mean that his boss or the adjacent boss
mm,
has their own play or their own ploy. They want to weigh in on it. So when I'm writing something or when I'm crafting some type of narrative, I'm going to these several of people who aren't in comms. They're engineers or they're planners or they're um, IT people. They have their own bit, tilt, and lit on it that I have to learn that it's an extended chain of command. It's like if my boss is happy with it, I need to ensure that this other chains of command are also on board with it, not just my boss is happy with it. Those people go kick rocks. Uh, which is something it's like no, the general's happy with it. That's fine. It's like no, not only is the general happy with it, is his aide de camp happy with it, is chief of staff happy with it, is sergeant major happy, and that's what I'm thinking of as I'm talking to the civilians. Like but it's really like is the CEO administrative assistant will should be behind this is the COO okay with this? What does legal say about this? What does the chief engineer think about this? Because they all have a different lit tilt that I've thought of, rather than that, just here's the narrative. Like, but how does this play in the grand scheme of things? So,
yeah, that makes sense. Lou, you had something to add?
Oh no, I was just agreeing with everything Ken was saying. Like,
Mm,
I work for what would be considered a nonprofit organization. We offer or we operate through federal and state grants. So none of the money all the money that we make either goes to operations, right, like salaries and um, y- just the general moving of parts. Um, and we're not making any sort of profit on anything. Everything goes back into the consumers that we are, put in charge of taking care of. And so yeah, it is interesting on that too, because on that level too, and Ken's exactly right. Like my boss may love something, right? Like I might write a story, I might do a video piece. Hell, I might even take a picture that is like, holy shit, that's such a good picture. But then when I show it to like a researcher, they're gonna be like, that is a great picture, but we don't have IRB clearance, right? To like we don't have HIPAA clearance, if that kind of clears it up
yeah.
for anybody that's not in the research world. Um, we don't have the clearance to release this photo, unfortunately. And it's a great photo, but we can't release it. So, yeah, it's a different it's sort of a different but the same sort of thing. Like we would run our stories right up through the chain of command, but a lot of times, especially at the battalion level, Ken, I don't know if you've experienced this with 325, but 3-2 wanted to at least read over my stories before I even sent it up to the regiment, right? Not not and they never changed anything. They were always just like, "Oh, great work. Send it up." But they wanted to at least read it so they knew what was coming up, right? They wouldn't just say like, just give me the headline of the next story. Like they wanted to read through everything, not because they didn't trust me. Maybe at the beginning it was that. Um, a lot of toward the end it just was like I want to be the first to read it type thing. um, once I gained that trust. But yeah, it's a team effort, and if everybody's not on board with something, even like again as minute as taking a photo, um, or the composition or what's in a photo. If everyone's not on board and you don't get that sort of clearance, something's going to go awry.
Yeah,
And
controlling the narrative seems
Yeah.
to be, yeah, kind of the key
yeah, and but
trend.
that's not necessarily to say that controlling the narrative is a negative.
Yeah.
It is more or less like making sure that we as one organization are all on board with something so that what we are putting out is the actual voice of the organization, right?
Yeah. Well, they hired you for that reason. Yeah.
Right. And so yeah, I definitely agree, in in place of a, you know, in place of a colonel is a VP, you know.
Yep.
And then you got your CEO, the general, so and a lot of organizations are structured that for us it's directors and assistant directors and things like that. So um yeah, there's differences, but yeah, I would say the Marine Corps definitely is a lot more simple in that manner, because it really is kind of one chain that you're going to, as opposed to like a tree of chains.
No, excellent. Great, great, honestly, great answers from both of you. I really appreciate both of your input on this. All right, so this next question is for Zach. When you study empires in decline, what warning signs tend to appear? And do you notice any of those signs developing in the US today?
Um,
Heavy, heavy question.
Man, that is a heavy question. The first one, and I guess the most obvious one for many people, when you look at empires in decline and modern parallels, political polarization, is the first one that I can think of, where you see media and people being divided along so many different routes. But also, what goes hand in hand with that is the weakening of institutions. It is documents. It is even leaders, government officials undermining set in stone rules, undermining set in stone documents like the Constitution, not following them, not allowing the proper checks and balances, or even the way things are supposed to work actually take place. That adds a factor to that. You can find a ton of that throughout history, but you can also see parallels with the United States of late. The concept of economic equality inequality stands out to me too, where you see more wealth being concentrated among the elites, where everybody else kind of gets their small little fraction of the pie that's kind of left out there.
Hmm.
There's a great political cartoon, and I wish I could find it real quick, that shows the wealth gap in the United States, and it's a cut down of a pie, and it's the majority of the pie, like 98% of it goes to this wealthy fat guy just sitting there, just huge guy. And then you've got a couple of Americans representing the middle class and the lower class that are just small and frail and hungry, and they're getting tiny, tiny slivers there compared to what everybody else gets. And Try to shorten this up, and if you guys want to add in anything after that, bring into it. But in many ways, when you see the weakening of empires, it's the rising of authoritarianism, where you see the leaders claiming to only speak for certain people, or you've got the concept of discrediting elections, discrediting media, where these votes don't apply to me or XYZ. Power trying to be consolidated into a singular conjoined front there, and the concept of checks and balances, whether it's the United States or not, just eroding away. And so for me, those are the three big warning signs that I see with empires, but I see a lot of parallels to that. When we think about the rule of law in the United States and that concept, nobody, whether it's myself as a lowly member of the working class or the President of the United States, is above the law and the Constitution in the United States of America. That applies to any president, any American that we currently have in this country, anyone that has ever existed as a
Does
citizen
it?
of the United States. And now we get into that point, though, like you bring up that question, Kevin, of realistically, does the rule of law apply? Do we see this bending of the rules for the elite, and for the rest of us that can't afford our way out of it, we have to suffer the consequences?
Absolutely. From O.J. Simpson to Donald J. Trump. Donald Trump is a 34 count felon. Whether you like him or not, he has been convicted by a jury of his peers, not Democrats. He went to trial. He was convicted. If you have enough money, you can get away with anything in this country. I don't know how many of us have gotten speeding tickets that would negate our driving privileges within this country, and we just throw $500 at it and it goes away. I mean, we don't even get points taken against us. You know, if you don't have that $500 or $1 million or whatever amount of money, it's pretty disgusting. Also, that wealth gap that you were pointing out, there's always been a fall guy, so to speak. And right now, it's either Democrats, it's socialists, it's communists. And Democrats, I can't really speak for them because I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a capitalist. But socialists and communists, they are fighting for the working class. They are fighting for wage rights. They are fighting for wage equality. And that's their entire purpose. So saying that the guys who want to take money from the rich and equal things out with them and recreate a middle class, demonizing them is a trend that I have seen throughout history. How about you guys? Well,
So as you're saying that, it's like um the thing about communists and Marxists and socialists is like we've been taught to demonize them. They are
mhm.
the enemy. Their ideas are the enemy. If you look back, like, Dr. King, right before he was assassinated, he was, always, the war against poverty and war against and poor people's campaign. That's where it was kind of leaning towards, and like
Yeah,
you got
Fred Hampton, as I brought
and
up
yeah,
earlier. Yeah.
for that, it's like even like the Black Panthers, like they were demonized, like trying to make it safe, make it equal, but they
Mhm.
were demonized. And if you look who stands to to benefit, it's the wealthy, and now. It continues. I was looking at some stat the other day. It's like 400 billion, no, 400, it's like 400 billionaires live in the US. And that's not saying they each own a billion. It's like there's 400 of them that probably have multiple billions. And if they took even a portion of what they had, the debt we had, the inequality they had, we'd be wiped out in like a day because it's
Yeah.
just so much money that that there's a certain amount of people that 400 people sitting on that could benefit 300 million Americans right now. But you can't say that because America.
They own us. It's
It's
because
my
they own us is why.
yeah,
They
yeah,
own the credit companies. They own Experian. And I mean, they own us that we're all under their thumb.
yeah.
Yeah, I would
If
say
okay,
I
go
would
ahead.
say on that too. I mean, if you stand against what the status quo is for that time period, uh, I wouldn't say just the government, but powerful people will break you down
Yeah.
and
Or
they
they'll
will
kill you.
utilize all their resources or they'll kill you. Or they'll utilize all their resources to completely discredit you or just exhaust you to the point. I mean, look at I don't know too much about her story, but I do remember seeing a documentary about Tupac's mom.
Yeah.
You brought up the Black Panthers, and
Yeah.
she was heavy in the Black Panthers, and I mean they wore her down. They locked her up. All this other stuff. She ended up getting addicted to crack and all this stuff, and um, that type of stuff, dude. They will bleed you dry and put you down in the gutter
Yeah.
if you stand against them.
Through and through.
So I just bringing that up since that
The
was a
wealthy, they can afford to do anything. That's
Hmm.
that's just the sad truth of it. Unless you guys have anything else to add, I'm going to move on to the next question. So this one's for Lou. What is one major misconception Americans have about our global role that you feel needs to be corrected?
I think that we're bystanders, like that we are, or that we are not also benefiting from globalism,
You mean
right?
we the citizens?
We the citizens, yeah,
Yeah,
right. Um, you know, I think globalism is looked at sort of in a like, oh well, we're just helping all these other countries out, but no, we're benefiting from, excuse me, these other countries and their resources and their minds and their education and I think that's one misconception. I think that is probably just overly inflated under the sort of America First idea.
Yeah.
Like that by participating in globalism, we are not putting America first. But and again, when I say globalism, I mean like the sharing of ideas and technology and resources. I don't necessarily mean one country losing or winning. Um, I mean us like collectively working together toward the goal of humanity, right? Which is to live prosperous, happy lives, you know,
Well, if you can afford
if you can afford it.
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
think, across the board, I mean, if you look at, like, for instance, Saudi Arabia, right? They've got this Riyadh season sort of campaign, not just campaign, I think it's a whole push, right? Where they're having like a whole bunch of entertainment events. You've got WWE,
Oh yeah,
UFC,
South Park did an
boxing.
episode on this. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and some would say the atrocities that they commit to their own people,
9/11.
yeah,
Oh, sorry.
and our people, and I may be diving into something a little bit deeper than that, but I
We're not
mean,
on that Saudi money, so say what you need to say.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily like call that globalism. I would call that a PR campaign for a country that has a
Yeah.
shit ton of money, that is utilizing their wealth and their resources and their pull to try to paint a different picture of what their everyday citizens actually experience. Um, so, I mean, there's that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great answer. Do you guys have anything to add to that? Okay. Well, moving on to our next question then. Ken, while, during our time or your time in the Marines, did you ever feel like the mission described to the public was fundamentally different from the mission we were actually carrying out? I feel like I've asked you this in a couple different ways, but this is a more direct question.
So yeah, I can answer early. It's like not really.
Hmm.
We were there to tell stories of everyday heroes and just highlight the risk and sacrifice involved. What I would wish we had did was focus more on the actual technology they were using, the skills that we were learning. But it seemed like we were more showcasing just look at us doing these exercises with Nation X or look at, this person getting this award type thing.
Hmm.
It'd have been more impactful, I think, about the showing people achieving real goals, like, people who were, patented something or earned a degree or, did these skills outside of their day jobs or how people took their time to actually explore the world to be a global citizen. They took their PTO, they went and did some work in a different country, volunteering or something other, or even just enjoying life. That would have been, I think, much better use. Because everyone understands that we conduct stuff between our military operations. Because I always say the boot camp and there's conflict, and I say boot camp and conflict. That's where the military truly exists, because we're engaged in what we're supposed to be doing. But what we miss out on is what we do in between those times, like those times of people actually being people, but they're also in the uniform. And I think that's one of the things that we missed out on what was actually going on. We just weren't just going to fight and going to train. It's like no, we were actually learning, exploring, growing, making the world better. And I think overall we generally missed that boat.
Yeah, just to add my perspective to it, I feel like we should have focused more on stories about the Iraqi people. I never fought the Iraqi people. I fought the Mujahideen. They were Saudis, Pakistanis, Syrians. I mean, there were a lot of different people from a lot of different places, and we fought them. We never fought the Iraqi people. The Iraqi people were completely and totally hospitable, and innocent. I would say, in a sense, they had been under the thumb of a totalitarian dictatorship for so long, and then they were under the American thumb. I felt terrible for these people who or completely, dare I say, innocent in the entire experience. I feel like we've just kind of left them to the wayside, where there were many stories to tell about their bravery and their perseverance and their courageousness. So,
Hmm.
do you guys have anything else to add to that?
I would second that too. Just thinking about it, man, I really wish that I had written a story about just those moments when we were kind of like school circle around, and to be say five Marines and five Iraqi security forces, and a lot of time it would be like that, and it wouldn't necessarily be like them on one side and us on the other. We're like intermingled, like one or the other, and we're trying to like communicate to each other and talk to each other through the a lot of times through the interpreters, but a lot of times little side conversations would pop off
Hmm.
in these things.
Hmm.
And I really wish I had taken the time to really write that story. I don't think I don't think it would have made it through, but at least it would have been written at the time where my memory was really good, and was experiencing that. I remember I did include a lot of the Iraqi security forces, like in the stories, like through an interpreter. I'd ask them like, "What's it like training with the Marines?" Of course, I'd have to usually use a pseudonym for their names. Just because of the threat to their families and things
John
like that
Smith.
for yeah. Right. No, I would ask them give me sort of a name, and hopefully they weren't giving me their neighbor's name that they didn't like.
That's probable.
Oh man.
But no, I really wish that I had written more of the behind the scenes type stories of
Hmm.
it's not just about us kicking in doors and you know was it kicking ass and
Taking names.
taking names or
Kicking
cashing
names,
checks and
taking
whatever.
ass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
But I wish that it was more of the camaraderie that was built between the Iraqi security forces and the Marines.
Hmm.
Um, because there was, I mean, like there was a gentleman who unfortunately died a few months after I left country, and our good buddy Neil had informed me about that, and yeah, I was devastated as much as I would be with any of the Marines.
Yeah.
He was such a good dude and such a funny guy and good-hearted, and he really did want the best for his country. And and that's no bullshit. That's not fluff, man. That's me 20 years later telling y'all like this. These guys really did want control of their own country. They wanted that pride that they have, or that we had. They looked at us as like, I want to wear the uniform the way you wear the uniform, and I wish we had told a lot more of those stories, and not always be so Marine centric,
Hmm.
because we could have included the Marine Corps obviously in within that, but to have more of the Iraqi security forces highlighted would have been great.
Absolutely. Ken, for the next question, I'm going to hit you up again. What part of the Marine Corps' public image is the most carefully manufactured, and what part is the most brutally honest, would you say? And this question honestly goes to all four of us. I'm sure we all have pretty profound answers to throw at this.
I'm gonna keep it simple, so it's the dress blues. Like
I
we've
know what
crafted
you're
the
gonna
dress
say.
blues, or that's it. And then on top of that, the craziest, the baddest people on the planet. I mean, that's just brutally honest. I mean, when you think about Marines, it's like half the time we're like, rah, 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 rah. We're grumbling and we're barking. We're making dark jokes. We're talking about our intelligence. We're talking about eating crayons in one sentence, and in the next minute, we're talking about destroying an entire region. It's like it's like what is wrong with these people? But
Look
it's
at this show, yeah.
so like that's the, like that perception of being so sharp dressed and so good looking and so professional, but then being absolute just bonkers. You don't want to be in front of them. You definitely want to be behind them. Like that narrative is crafted in stone, and I don't think that ever going anywhere. It's like raising the flag on Suribachi. It's next 150 years, the Marine Corps is guaranteed. Rah, rah, rah.
When I was at Wounded Warriors, they sent us all to there was a kind of a joint event where it was a comedy show, and they allowed us to sign up for it, and it was free for us to go, and we got like two drinks each, and blah blah blah. But we went, and there were the Army's version of the Wounded Warriors, the Air Force's version of Wounded Warriors, the Navy's version, which they typically end up in ours. But we went, and one comedian, I remember him in particular, he came up and he was like, "Where are my army guys?" And they were like, "Huh," and then the Air Force, and they were like, "Yeah," and then the Navy guys were like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Where are my Marines?" And we were all like, "Yeah." And, like, "Rah, rah, rah, rah." And he was like, "That's how I know the Marines, because they just fucking make animal noises." You just gotta depend on the Marines because they're gonna come out barking like dogs and mooing like cows, all kind of shit. And it's like, yeah, we're pretty much animalistic. That's just who we are. So I mean, that was a really profound point. What do you guys have to add to this?
I would, Ken hit it right on the nail on the head, right? Like the Marine Corps, right? Clean cut, right? Like cut up from the gut up, just solid professional, and that is definitely the Marine Corps tries their damnedest to make Marines that way. But at the end of the day, we are scoundrels. We
Yeah.
are, you know, we're what America wants us to be, actually. If I had to say anything, like you want your quote unquote warriors to be kind of ruthless and animalistic. That's why we bark and that's why we grunt. And that's why I always try. I have a hard time sometimes doing the like what we say like
Mhm.
because sometimes it'll come off like Tim the Toolman Taylor where I'm like
Oh
and
man.
but no, I think that's um but again, I'll say this, like when it comes time push to shove, uh there's nobody I trust to be more professional when the moment counts than a United States Marine, and that includes us veterans. Like when I meet a veteran and they tell me they're Marine, I'm like, yeah, I know who you are. Like I pretty much know what you got going on, and that I could probably count on you. Now that's not always the case, of course. Uh, Marine Corps is not a monolith, right? We're not all, we're reflection of the society that we come from as well. Um, but yeah, I think the Marine Corps just does a really good job about the bravado, the and sort of that sort of um, ruthless killer,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Before I hand this off to Zach to answer that, I want to point out this quote by Eleanor Roosevelt. The Marines I've seen around the world have the cleanest bodies, the filthiest minds, the highest morale, and the lowest morals of any group of animals I've ever seen. Thank God for the United States Marine Corps. Oh man, she said it best. How can
Yeah.
she put it better than we can? Zach, what do you have to say on
Oh
this?
man, I think of the quote from Generation Kill by Ray that the best way to describe the Marine Corps is America's abused and used pit bull puppy that's treated
Yeah,
so poorly until it's time to be unleashed on America's enemies, and then it goes to town. Like I know that's a loose explanation of it, but to me it makes the most sense.
yeah.
When you that question, what is the most brutally honest? I'd say a Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps is the most brutally honest aspect.
A senior Lance Corporal.
You know, um, and I've discovered that in my times of interviewing and talking to Marines, that guys realistically that didn't get higher than corporal have been the most brutally honest for me about what they went through, willing to open up and describe, or at least try to describe, their highest of highs and their lowest of lows. And that's coming from me of interviewing officers, from generals to company commanders and platoon leaders. You can see how the officers at times will politically navigate some of the questions I ask them. Meanwhile, I ask, you know, Lance Corporal Schmuckatelli a question, and he's like, "Well, I'm 16 beers deep, but let me tell you what actually happened," and he just goes off. Um, and that's not just about like combat. That's them just being open about prostitution in Vietnam or in Korea and be like, well, this is what I did. And I just find that aspect of um the the NCOs, the grunts, those of you that did not realistically get higher than sergeant, in my opinion, are the most brutally honest aspect. If you know how to ask the right questions, and if you all trust the person asking the questions, you'll get what you're looking for. It might not be exactly what you want to hear, but you're going to get what you're looking for.
I feel targeted by this answer. I
I
feel
would never, ever do that to you, my good
because
friend Kevin.
I got to sergeant. I picked up sergeant while I was at Wounded Warriors because they actually zero out your MOS and they put you on all kinds of boards and stuff that like where you can get ranked before you get out. But yeah, I was Lance Corporal twice, so that means I'm doubly
I
honest.
was
And then
about to say,
I was corporal twice, which means I was
Wow.
doubly
I was about to
honest.
say, if you want a clear depiction of what the Marine Corps is, talk to a Lance Corporal second award.
Um, for our next question, this one's for Zach. Looking at the long arc of American expansion, do you think the US has ever actually viewed itself as an empire, or do we just avoid using the word while behaving like an empire?
No, but yes, and I'll explain that. I think the closest we ever probably got to calling ourselves an empire was the 1898 to like maybe 1908 time frame,
The
where you really
Spanish-American
see
War. Yeah.
Spanish-American War. Other than that, you don't see the word. You,
Yeah.
you see it as destiny. You see it as a mission to spread democracy, to spread freedom, to liberate these countries that are under this rule of iron fist, but it's never ever mention of the word or the concept of an empire. And there's a few different reasons behind that. You think of culturally when we think about the word empire, we think about British rule. How was our lives under British imperial rule, empire there, and what was the result of that? So a lot of the times, we try to avoid that term and usage there because of what the connotation brings.
Yeah.
Empire, people think of Star Wars. That's not great. The Empire is the bad guys. We don't want to be that. We are not an empire. We're spreading liberty. We are bringing democracy to your front door. We are bringing progress to your nation. We are going to bring order to your country.
Yeah.
And I say that in that sarcastic tone, but I also see it too. An empire comes to your door whether you want it or not. And in many ways, the United States has, from our policies and politics, and it's not always been welcomed. I mean, there's plenty of evidence of how many people have pushed back against American policies, American democracy, and the spreading of that. That'd be a whole nother great episode to dive into. So, you see American politicians in the past embracing it, but today, not so more. It's more so America's mission. It's America's duty. It is our destiny, but it's not an empire.
Yeah, that's a great answer, man. I really appreciate that. What do you guys have to add to that?
I think Eminem said it best. Don't you want to grow up to be just like me?
Sorry, right. I'm scribbling this down. That was definitely a good idea for an episode. Um, Man, that was a really good answer. I have so many. I mean, I could go off on a tangent for a long time, but I don't want to hold us up too much. Um, this next question, if you guys are all right with moving on, would be for Ken. How do with your in your experience, how do PR teams, public relations teams, turn concepts like American strength, freedom, or unity into marketable narratives?
Yeah, I struggled thinking about this question because I was like, I think those are all waning. You know, um, for me, it's like, how can we talk about strength, freedom, and unity when, a large portion of the country is incarcerated, you know?
Yeah,
We,
I live in
we,
California, man. The percentage here is absolutely insane.
it's and we love the friends, freedom, the unity. It's like, but our unity, we can't have the core, we can't even have conversations anymore, shouting matches. So
Mhm.
where's the unity in that? It's like when we bring up the bad word of DEI because we don't want to share. We don't want to, it includes like DEI includes veterans.
Yeah.
It includes everybody. It's like so all these things like it's PR teams trying to push those concepts. It's very hard because there's so many other things that are looking at it in the face of this isn't true. We're living in a dream world. Um, so I think we're waking up where we realize it's not as rosy and gold as we normally think. Um, Even though we want to show strength and unity, it's just we have so many things that are saying, well, not really. So I know that doesn't truly answer the question, but that's my answer.
It does. It definitely does. As a socialist, I see the capitalist narrative being pushed through and through. I've seen it as this propagandist narrative that's been twisted and pushed, and it's morphed its way through my life in the 41 and almost 42 years that I've been alive, I've seen it just pushed through and through and through. It's never been a solid thing. What would you guys have to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, to chime off of what Ken just said, the land of the free. We lock up 20% of the world's population, yet only holding 5% of the world's population to begin with. 20% of the world's population is incarcerated here in the United States. That's
Yeah.
staggering.
Staggering.
And there are always ties um, back to one slavery, but then also to also just the capitalist nature of the country, right? Anytime that you privatize and create a business off of a public service, right? So if we are making a profit off of locking people up, guess what? We're going to continue to lock people up.
Yeah.
And not to say that everybody locked up, needs to be released tomorrow or anything like that.
Hmm.
Some people need to be up in there, right? But there's a large population in there that has no business being locked up, had no business being locked up. We're talking about marijuana offenses. We're talking about, um, I hate to say it, for some of the ladies out there, child support payments, things, crazy things. They will lock you up for any goddamn thing
Yeah.
now. And
One of the
and the
conditions.
reason that
Oh,
they
continue.
do is because they make money off of having a prison population, right? Who
Yeah.
who are going to work, uh, the farms that are owned by the state.
Yeah.
Prisoners. How much are they going to get paid? Cents on the dollar. So we are talking about, you know, modern day slavery, and we can talk about the 13th Amendment, but that is a different
Hmm.
topic. That's a different, maybe a different episode. But yeah, how can we call ourselves the land of the free if we are not?
On that, when the Confederacy surrendered, one of their conditions was that they would be able to vote in the upcoming vote in the Senate on the 13th Amendment. They would not surrender unless that condition was met. So, I mean, what you're saying plays fucking true. The Confederates wanted to, perpetuate slavery in their own way,
Right.
and
And
they did, and it stands to this day. It absolutely does.
and I would say anybody watching this is like, well, how does this tie back into the original topic of patriotism? I mean,
How
if
does
we're
it
talking,
not?
yeah, if we are talking about every party that has ever won, typically is strong on crime, right? Those are the narratives, right? Um, I mean, how do you think a Southern Democrat like Bill Clinton, right, got elected? He was the opposite of what was perceived of the Democrats at the time, which was weak on crime. He comes in, of course, we've got the crime bill and all that. Um, and yeah, it's a part of what people might consider patriotism. Like, oh, or what are you for the convicts? No, I'm just for freedom, and
Yeah.
not being literally locked up for any old reason. And yeah, that's where I'll I'll cut it off there, or otherwise
Well,
I'm going to go on and
I'll
on.
I'll add this one in before I have to, head out myself, and I'll leave this rolling for you guys to talk, and of course the recording. Well, what's the saying? Land of the free, but some terms and conditions may apply.
Yeah.
Got you've got that to consider. And how that can be taken in so many different ways for the realities that we're dealing with. Especially when we think about convictions and what can end you up convicted compared to the reasons why. And it's a real sad reality when we think about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Speaking of the land of the free and the home of the brave, I don't know if you guys listen to Brother Ali. I absolutely do. He has a song called Uncle Sam Goddamn, and where he says the land of the thief, the home of the slave. And it couldn't be more proper. I think that a lot of people would hear that, especially people that I grew up around. They would hear that and they would think that doesn't apply to me. But if you're fucking poor, it 100% applies to you. You are poor because they are stealing from you. You are a slave to them. I brought up, the credit score. I've said this time and time again throughout our episodes. Credit scores didn't exist until 1988. And that was just another way to enslave the poor. Um, the perpetuation of the rich is based off of demonizing and enslaving the poor, whoever the poor may be at that time. And that's just how it's always going to be in capitalism. That is why I'm a socialist. If anyone asks, that's why. I mean, I can actually tell you the exact moment I became a socialist, and it was when I learned this. Um, so yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you guys and your perspectives coming out on this.
Can I just say one last thing on this?
Please, absolutely do.
Right. There are a lot of times where religion is thrown into the mix
Mhm.
to justify the reasonings behind that. But the last time I checked, God says nothing in the Bible about not smoking weed. That's all I'm
He
gonna say on
he doesn't
that.
really say, he doesn't mention a lot of things.
He
And
don't mention a lot
what
of
was
things that
it?
people get locked up for every day,
What was
Yeah.
it? Trump's favorite
but it's
favorite
God's
Bible verse
will.
was Corinthian 2. Corinthian 2 says you don't smoke weed.
Right.
All right, we just got three questions left, guys, and then I have a discussion question. Whether you want to do it or not, it's really up to you. But this next question is for Ken. Given the current political climate, how much influence do you think public relations has? How much influence do you think public relations has had in shaping modern American ideas of patriotism, and national identity?
It's the bread and butter.
Hmm.
I think communications, PR in a whole, like people know that if they want to get something out, like they have to bring us in. They understand the narrative. They understand the storytelling. I mean, for good or for ill, Donald Trump and his rhetoric, like that's how he gets he can spin a yarn, tell a story. He can pull that PR in his direction, talk to people at their level. It's like it's a master class. I mean, I don't have to agree with him, but it's a master class in
Yeah.
communicating. And the PR people, are out there like me. It's like, how do we tell our narratives and stuff? It's like it's never about the product. It's about the person and how the person's going to interact with it. And then you have to think about with that, how do we get the behavior change? Obviously for the president, it was like convince people that he was the right way. The behavior change is switch to vote for him. For me, it's like how can we get people to understand why we're doing this said project and how it benefit them. That's how I can get them to swing on that side. So it's all, it's been around for a long time. I mean, well, PR really has only been around for like 100 years or so if you really want to, get historical on it. But it's like now we're like in a renaissance age where people are realizing the power of PR more so than journalism because
Yes.
people have they realize, oh, journalism, but PR people, huh?
I have no faith in journalism.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have no face of journalism, so PR has just kind of risen up, and you'll see a lot of people who are former journalists come over to the dark side of PR. And I think we kind of we all in that same boat. It's like where PR people are like we're now controlling the narratives of many things. So yeah, that's it shapes it. It molds it. It's there. It's like it wouldn't move without it right now.
Mm, that's a profound answer. I really appreciate that. Ludi,
You
have
were
anything to
you were molded by PR.
You
Shaped
were
by
molded by the PR.
You only adopted PR.
I was
I was
born
born
in the
in it.
PR.
No, yeah. I mean, dude, everything Ken says is always hitting the nail
Yeah.
on the head. But
Bro, we
I
gotta have you back. We gotta have you back for another episode.
for
Yeah, of
sure.
Absolutely.
course, anytime.
Um, yeah, I mean, it is what it is, man. I mean, it really is. The crazy thing about communications, and I don't know if Ken would object to this or have a different opinion on it, but communications in general now, because it's such a strong medium, right? With streamers, podcasts, all of this is tools of PR, right?
Hmm.
Typically, you would have like a professionally trained PR person, doing whatever, and you've got some kid out there, making millions of dollars doing what a PR person would do. And so things are actually within the communications field becoming so specialized with each aspect of PR that you've got influencers, who are, being tapped by organizations to do PR for them, you know. Um, and you can see it in everyday sports. Uh, they may be showing like highlights, and then they'll show like a streamer's reaction, right, to that particular play, for that sports moment or something like that. And so there are a lot of things that are being um, within the communications field being sort of divided up and more freelance and specialized in those particular areas than just having, obviously we're always, hopefully always going to have professionals like Ken and myself leading the way and kind of guiding these organizations. But for the most part, um, I think a lot of things are being very, like I said, uh, I'm sorry, and you can cut this sort of
No, no, no.
missing the point here. Um, yeah,
No,
things are
you know,
becoming a lot
Yeah.
more. What was the word I used before? They were
You said it's going more specialized, streamlined.
more specialized. There it is.
Mm.
Sorry, a lot more specialized than just jack of all trades sort of thing.
Yeah.
no,
In
that
fact,
makes perfect sense.
I'll follow up with that one. I don't disagree with you. But if you think about this medium that we're on right now, not even 15 years ago. I wouldn't go so back as 20 years ago. This wasn't really a thing.
Yeah,
You would have to be a radio DJ or somebody to do something like this. And now it's like anybody can create. And you're
yeah.
right. Look, I don't think PR people or communicate people are going to lose their jobs. We're only going to get elevated, but we're going to be in a position of more of a strategic role where we're not doing everything. We're kind of guiding it. I even think back just not even 5, 6 years ago when I was working for ag and I was doing farmers market. And to get people to come, I was reaching out to Yelp influencers because that's what people were following. And but it's like that's how I was changing the narrative because instead of me saying go write the story, it's like, hey Yelp influencers, let me come on, let's give you a tour of this, and they would go out there and create the content for me, and I would shape the narrative that way. And it's like before that, we
Smart.
weren't doing that. We weren't doing that, but now we have that. So it's growing.
I mean, that's what capitalism is just dipping into the market that controls the market. I mean, I would say that not the market that controls the market, but the people who control the market, who influence the market. And, I'm not necessarily trying, I don't think any of us are trying to influence the market per se, more than just, kind of influence people's mindsets and the way they look at the country and politics and the economy and I mean, just the existence that we live in. It's really important. I really feel like what we are all talking about right now, whether this is seen by people within the next year, within the next 5 years, even if they see this 10 years from now, I think it is a profound way of looking at things. And I think that everything that we're saying is absolutely important. Um, so for our next question, and we only have two left, and then I have kind of an open discussion question if you guys are game. Lou, as a communications specialist, when you look at media's coverage of patriotism inside of the US, do you feel or think that certain forms of patriotism get celebrated while others get ignored or labeled as un-American?
I mean, again, it depends on who you're watching. Yeah,
Hmm.
having a barbecue on 4th of July and, waving the American flag obviously is always going to be sort of like the staple of Americana, like lighting off fireworks, things like that.
Crossing the state
Um,
lines to buy those fireworks.
right. Thank you, North Carolina.
Yeah. Thanks,
Um,
Georgia.
so yeah, I think, just to keep this short and sweet, I think that patriotism is always going to be looked at the same way that Americans look at it. Uh, it's going to be on political lines and it's going to be divided. You've got currently one side that is trying to, um, I don't want to say like take ownership or like bogard the phrase patriot and
Mhm.
say like I'm a patriot because I support the current president type thing. And
Whatever.
then you've
Yeah.
got the other side that's saying, no, you're not a patriot because of this. Not saying that either one is wrong or right, but I think we're going to have to figure out um, a way to establish what a patriot truly is. Which again, I go back to what I said when I first joined the conversation of a patriot is somebody that looks out for their fellow citizens, that makes sure that um, the little guy is not getting stomped out. Because again, if you don't stand up for my rights, or if I don't stand up for your rights, who's going to stand up for mine?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's that phrase. Just stamp that. Not
It's
saying
all
that I
about the
need.
Constitution.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and
As you said earlier.
yeah, and I think maybe we as veterans need to step up and start creating more of that narrative, um, and point out false prophets,
Mm.
false patriots.
Yeah.
The golden calves, if you will.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's my view on the current state of that phrase.
Yeah. Ken, what would you have to add to that, if
Oh,
anything?
yeah. So just kind of right piggybacking off of that. After he's like, oh, what was saying? No, it's like we live in a country where to say it another way, it's like I may not agree with anything you say, but I will fight to the death, defend your right to say it. Uh,
Yep.
kind of like who's going to stand up for my rights if you don't, same. It's like that's what a patriot is. It's like it's okay to disagree and it's okay to agree, but it's not okay to make some to take your A out on somebody who disagrees with you. And like I tell my daughters all the time, like we have the freedom to pick up a Bible and read. There's places around the country that you can be killed for that. We have My wife has the right to get in a car and drive and go get groceries. Places around where like that's being a patriot, exercising right. You have the right to peaceably protest. It's like you may not agree with some of the things, but you have the right to peaceably protest, peaceably assemble. Like that's what being a protest patriot means, is doing these things that are your inalienable rights. And when you stop doing those things, you're not a patriot anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't think of a better answer for what patriotism is. You asked that earlier, and it's just like you just explained it fully. Um, the next question would be for Ken, and I think both of you will have a very good answer for this. Back when you were Marine Corps Public Affairs, where did you personally draw the line between patriotism and propaganda? And has that line shifted for you now that you're in civilian public relations and looking back on everything with some distance between?
So I'll to answer the question, I'm say my viewpoint hasn't changed. Um, I did a lot of my research and study when I was in undergrad on propaganda theory, because I was struggling with the fact that if what I was writing was propaganda, or if it was just too heavy-handed on one side or another. And something that really helped me is I kind of developed my own personal code of ethics I learned through public relations side of America. It's like some things I ask myself: is it true? Is it helpful? Is it legal? Is it needed? And then I ask myself, can I keep my true north of being honest, transparent, loyal, and decisive, and show integrity while I'm doing it? Like, and at the end of the day, or really short it down, if I go to bed tonight, can I sleep?
Yeah,
And if I can answer that simple question amongst all those others, then I know I'm doing the right thing. So,
excellent answer. Lou, do you have anything to add to that?
No.
No,
Yeah,
that was a
that's
great answer.
dead on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So to kind of wrap things up, I have one open question. This is for all of us to discuss. I'm sure we'll all have an answer to this. But looking at the United States as it is right now, do you think the country is moving toward a deeper understanding of what patriotism should be, or is it drifting further into a mix of nationalism and branding? And what do you think, each of you personally, it would take to change that direction? That's a loaded question.
I can try to stab it first.
Go for it.
I think we are currently in a I'm a patriot, no, I'm a patriot, and you're not a patriot, and you're not a patriot sort of mentality. It's a little kid's mentality, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like I'll point out some of the flaws I think in some of the current like rhetoric with patriotism. I'm a patriot because I support the president of the United States. Okay. So here's the flaw with that. Did you support, say, the last president?
Womp
The one before him?
womp.
The one before him? The one before that? So when we use statements like that, it pigeonholes what a patriot means, right?
Mhm.
Like, because you're not always going to agree with what the president says. And to me, that makes you a patriot. Guess
Yeah.
what? You kind of already are because you don't always agree with what every president says. Now,
We're we were taught
just
critical
because
thinking
you
in like fourth grade for
yeah,
this reason. Continue,
just
please. Sorry.
because you agree, with this current president and didn't agree with the last one doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you not a patriot. But telling somebody else that they are not a patriot because they don't like the person that you like that's in charge, that's not patriotism. That's a fascism. And the problem, and those two things don't they don't gel. They don't mix, right? Um, I would say that the way out of that is to celebrate and recognize our differences, celebrate and recognize that we all do have this awesome right to speak out against things that we don't agree with on both sides of it, respect each other's opinions, not call each other Nazis or fascists. I mean, of course, unless you're displaying those things. But for the most part, I would never call anybody a supporter of the current president a Nazi just off of face, right? Like I would need to like learn a little bit more about what the person is, their ideologies are, right? I think we need to get away from those like blanket statements that put people in a place where they are not going to be receptive to dialogue, right? So if I find out you're MAGA and I just automatically be like, well, you're a Nazi. Well, maybe not. Maybe that person just was tired of the status quo and voted for Trump for those
Or maybe
reasons.
they're
And there's
fucking
a
Nazis. No, no, just play.
or maybe they are, but again, it again it takes a deeper dive, right, to figure those
Yeah,
things out,
absolutely. Yeah.
right? And so I think we need to get away from that just labeling like, oh, you like Biden, you're a socialist or first off, Biden is one of the most centric presidents that ever existed. But then secondly, again, it's getting away from those blanketed statements of you like this person, therefore, right? Or
Hmm.
you think this way, therefore. Um, you know, Patriotism is about respecting the beliefs of other citizens and defending, as Ken said, defending their right to defend their position and supporting them in that effort, even if you don't support or defend what they're talking about. So that's how
Absolutely.
I'm going to end my that's my little bit.
I'll throw my 2 cents in really quick, and because Ken is our special guest, I'll give him the floor afterward. I'll be very short with this. I do feel that we have fallen more into a mix of nationalism and branding, and exactly what you were just saying, Lou, with you're either with us or you're against us. That type of attitude is so polarized, and it's fucking cancer in our society. The thing that I feel would take to change it is the doing away with this wave of anti-intellectualism, this just taken over. My I I'll bring up, in a very anecdotal example, my brother is very much MAGA. He is very much racist to the point where I haven't talked to him in years. Our parents are both passed away. He and I are all we have as far as family goes, and I will not talk to this bastard. I
Mm.
hope he sees this. The guy is as anti-intellectual as they come, but he lies about having a college degree on his LinkedIn.
Mm.
What does that tell you? You know what I'm saying? The anti-intellectualism is is the cancer that is eating away at patriotism, at what our country could have been and what our country could be. Whenever I go to debate someone who is MAGA or even just claims to be a Republican, because I separate the two actually, um, they 9 times out of 10 just turn out to be a fucking moron. They do not understand. They couldn't list the three branches of government. They couldn't tell you what any of the policies that they support are. They can tell me that I'm evil because I'm a socialist, but they don't know the definition of socialism. You know, they think that Democrats are socialists when socialism is an economic structure more than it is a political party. They they do not understand what the hell they're arguing or what the hell they're supporting at this point. And I feel like boistering education, pushing for free public university. Maybe not private universities, they can still charge whatever the hell they want for Ivy League or whatever. But just having a public university to where the common man is able to get a post high school education and understand what they are actually arguing for. I feel like that would be the solution. And that's where I'll leave it off. Ken, the floor is all yours, please.
I like what you both said. It's really profound. Like, I'll kind of follow up with, thinking that, you're right, we've already drifted. You know, it's sad to say, it has drifted and I don't know if it's gonna swing back. People keep saying the pendulum swings the other way. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah,
And usually if it swings the other way, it's gonna be something hard. It's gonna hit something hard on the way there. And I don't want to be in the way. Um, but yeah, it's very difficult because I think what we really need we need that intellectual conversation. We need, as we say back in Alabama, we need to come to Jesus moment. We need to have a big families sit down and go through some of these hard topics. We need to actually talk to each other and actually come up with solutions rather than just blaming and naming this person and splitting off into our camps and doing whatever. It's like we can't, like we've been doing that for decades, centuries, and we're not going anywhere. Like we have to do something different. Um, it's become so worrisome that members of my family have like literally started the process of leaving the country.
Hmm.
And I've been like even my family we've thought about and considered that because we're like we don't know what will happen because it continues to get scary and people continue not to help or how to have this conversation. It's just becoming more and more uh, volatile. I've been watching, watch these crazy movies like Civil War and House of Dynamite and things like that, and I'm like, it doesn't seem fiction anymore.
Yeah.
That's what's scary. It's like I we would need a complete overhaul of almost everything, and the people that are in charge, the people who have the power, that's not going to go the way we think it's going to go. Because the people who have power, they will fight to keep that power. They will fight to keep. Uh, they will conserve, as conservatives, conservative. They will conserve the structures that are already in place. They
They
will
have the
not,
money to do so. Yeah.
and they have the money to do so. Um, and without something being horribly damaging, I don't, unless something, comes along, I don't see it changing for the better anytime soon. Sad to say. And as much as I love this country because, like I said, I see for what it is. It could be a great country, and I'm not gonna say it's ever not been great, but it's been a good country. I've been in several different countries. Is America the best country in the world? No, but it's not the worst, not by a long shot.
Yeah.
It's a great country, great place to be. I see why people want to be here. I see why people, stay here. But the way we're going, we're not going to be remembered very well in history books at this point in time. So I had a couple other things I can go down. I was going to talk about Ronnie Ching's.
Do it, please.
So yeah, so I don't know if you guys ever watch this comedian Ronnie Chang. He's talking about how he's talking to like a MAGA person and how you have to actually watch the whole film. I'm not going to do it justice, but he's basically talking about how what people in the MAGA party, what they believe, like how America's not doing so great because of our kids math scores are down, and we moved away from manufacturing and like all these different things. He basically lays out what people should really be thinking when they say let's go Brandon and what I was like all these good concepts. It goes back again to comedians telling the truth, but he has this great little spiel about all these things that America needs and why he would agree with it if people can actually say the things instead of just spouting off random, you're this type of person, you're that type of person. It's like, no, I support it because this reason we need to do this or this reason to do that. It's really funny and it's really profound. Um, so yeah, I'll leave it at that because I can go down rabbit holes and I wrote my notes so I won't go down rabbit holes.
Well, we'll definitely have you on for another episode so we can go down these rabbit holes. I would love to hear them. Um, I think I will just go ahead and wrap it up right here. That was an amazing episode. I think this was our best. I think I've said that a couple times now, but I truly mean it this time. I really appreciate you coming on, Ken. Zach, he had to leave a little bit earlier, but I really appreciate his very profound perspective on everything that we've covered this episode. And Lou, absolutely, man. Like every episode, you've hit the nail on the head. So I appreciate everything that you guys have said. I hope you appreciated some of what I said, and it wasn't just a bunch of drunken rambling. And with that, I'll go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you. To our viewers, thank you very much for making it this fucking far into this episode. And that's it for this episode of Goats and Cookies. Thank you all very much.